Next, what we can do for our input validation is to incorporate input validation summary. So here what we can do is that first, so I'll go to the source. So what I am doing here is that I am going to incorporate the input validation at the top of our form. So basically I actually insert a paragraph here. Okay, so this is where we are going to incorporate our input validation. So we can incorporate this input validation summary anywhere within the form. Now go to our toolbox. Okay, so I'm going to pin this for a while. So now we have this validation summary. So I'm going to drag and drop this here. This is our input validation summary. Okay, so now this is our source. Okay, so you do not have to enter to change anything here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to run this. Okay, so when I click this button, you can see that these are the list of summary that relates to the input validation errors. Okay, for example, these are all marks not entered. Now let's say that I'm going to enter a value that is beyond the range. Okay, then I click this button and you can see that there is quiz out of range. Okay, so this, it will give out the proper error, and if I am to enter a correct value here, for example 50, and we will find that this is actually input validation related to the quiz has not been displayed in the validation summary. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. Okay, now within this validation summary, there are some properties that we can actually change. So I'm not going to cover many of these. Just I'm going to highlight this header text. For example, this is, if I am to type in validation summary here, okay, you will notice that this is the header text validation summary. Okay, again, if I am to run this, okay, let's say I click this button, so you have this validation summary. Okay, this is the header text. Okay, and I'm going to stop this, and you will notice that this is the header text. Okay, now there are some other validation input validation control. So for the purpose of our class, I'm going to cover another one, which is the compare validator. So for the purpose of this, I'm going to actually add a new form. So basically, for example, now this is okay. Now I'm going to add a new form here. So highlight the root. Okay, I'm going to add. So I'm going to add web form. Okay, now the name of the web form does not matter. Okay, for now by default mine is web form 4 because I have done some other work here, but doesn't matter whether it's web form 2, 3, does not matter. So I click OK. Okay, now I'm going to actually delete this div first because I'm not going to use this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add this paragraph. Now I'm going to actually incorporate some form of let's say you want to register a password. So normally you will be asked to enter the password twice. So we need to compare between the first password box and the second password box must be the same. Okay, so now I'm going to incorporate the compare validator input validator control. Now the first thing that I'm going to do here is that I'm going to enter, say this is password. Okay, let's say this is enter password, and let's go for a standard toolbox. So now the standard toolbox, okay, I'm going to drag a text box. Now this is okay, just to enter this. Okay, now this is enter password. Okay, now for the purpose of this this particular password box, okay, we can actually format this. Okay, so I'm going to highlight this, click this. Okay, so here, so scroll. Okay, there is a text mode here. Okay, text mode by default this is single line. Okay, here we can have several types. So for the purpose of our exercise, I'm going to choose password. Okay, and if you look into the source, we have the text mode equal to password. And for example, now for the ID, I'm going to rename this text box to txt password 1. Okay, okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is that I'm just going to copy the whole of this paragraph. Okay, now here the second one, I'm going to change this to re-enter password, and the ID will be txt password 2. Okay, and the text mode is okay. Okay, now we have something like this, and if we are to run this, okay, we can display, okay, these are the forms that we can enter. Okay, so here, okay, if you are using Microsoft Edge, you can see that this is the password that you have entered. Okay, now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually add a button. So this is for the purpose of postback. So simply I'm just going to add another paragraph here. So I'll go to the standard toolbox, can look for a button, and I'm going to drag and drop the button here. So it doesn't matter for the name of this button, button 1. Okay, now this is the text. Okay, let's say the text will be submit. Okay, this is submit. Okay, there's no method attached to this particular button because this is for the purpose of postback. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to actually incorporate some form of input validation, whereby it will check this second password box. Okay, so that it must be the same with actual the first one. Now the first one, we want to make sure that this is a required field, so the user must enter some form of text here. So now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to actually drag and drop the required field validator here. This is the required field validator. Okay, and now the error message. Okay, now I decided that not to have a error message here because I'm not going to use any validation summary. Okay, so I delete this. Now in terms of the text, okay, so this is okay, password required. Okay, so this is the text. Okay, this is password required. So if I am to okay, enter, okay, this is password required. In addition to that, again I will actually in terms of the display, we can change the display to dynamic if this is necessary. Okay, yeah, this is display equals to dynamic. Now, so for the purpose of this, so I'm going to actually name this ID required field validator 1. This is for password 1. Okay, and what we also need to do, very important, I almost forgot about this, is that okay, we need to actually choose the control to validate. So for control to validate, okay, this one, let me actually this is control, this is txt password 1. Okay, so okay, I'm going to enter this so that we can see this. Okay, so this is the first input validator. Okay, now similarly what we are going to do is that we are going to actually add this to the re-enter password, because this is also requires you to enter something. Okay, now I'm going to copy the whole of this, copy, and I'm going to paste this here. Okay, now for this one I'm going to change this to RFV password 2. Okay, and the control to validate is txt password 2. Okay, 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 so if I am to run this, so if I do not enter anything, it will display such messages. Okay, now this is gone because we have entered something. Okay, this will also be gone. Okay, but however we need to compare. This must be the same with this. So this is where compare validator comes in. Okay, now let me stop. Okay, so what we are going to do next is that I'm going to actually put a message here. So what where can I put? We can put this anywhere. So I'm going to actually put another paragraph here, okay, under the button, and I'm going to actually drag and drop this compare validator here. So the error message, if there is an error message, will be displayed at below the button. Okay, it will display here. Okay, so in terms of what we can do is that, okay, we can actually rename this ID as CV. CV is compare validator. So this is password. So we are comparing the password. Okay, let's say that I choose not to use the error message here, so I'm going to delete the whole thing. Okay, now this message is password not same, meaning that if there is let's say password not same, this kind of, this is the error message. Okay, now what we can do here is that we can go similarly. We need to actually go control to validate. Okay, now this is control to validate. First is that we are going to validate password 2, txt password 2. So meaning that we are comparing password 2 with password 1. So this is txt password 2. Control to compare. Okay, so this is txt password 1. Okay, so password 2, we compare this to password 1. Okay, so now let us try something out. Okay, now I'm going to run this. Okay, now if I do not enter anything, so there is password required. Now let's say that I type in a password. Let's say QWERTY. So this is the password. Okay, now let's say that I enter another password, which is the wrong password, ASDFG H. Okay, so when I click this, you can see that the password is not the same. Okay, the password is not the same. Okay, now let me change to the correct password, QWERTY, and I am to submit this. Then you can see that this is the correct password. Of course, you must write some form of method if you have this practical use, but for the purpose of this exercise, just for comparison purposes. Okay, so that's it for input validation. Of course, there are other applications of input validation, but these are among the most useful that I will show in this current exercise. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much.